So, I feel like I've talked about this before, but I think it's just because I've talked about this to people before. I don't know if I've actually made a video about it. I know I've been meaning to every time I am reminded of it, but I don't think I've actually made a video about it. So let's get on to topic instead of wasting time. Okay, so, um, so there's this thing called a scientific theory. And people often say, oh, it's just a theory to discredit it, but they don't quite understand the difference between just a run-of-the-mill theory and a scientific theory. So I'm mostly talking about evolution because people always are like, oh, it's the theory of evolution. It's not a scientific fact, it's just a theory. And they don't understand what a scientific theory is. But even let's just go into a regular run-of-the-mill theory. You can't really have a theory without having some evidence to back you up. I mean, otherwise it's just a random fucking doesn't make. Yeah, you say you have a theory about your TV show. You have that theory because you have all this evidence and you're thinking like, oh, maybe this is what this is because of the evidence that you have gotten from what you've seen in the TV show. Like maybe this will happen next, or maybe this is the way things are working, or whatever else. So obviously it's not completely, without something to base it on. If it's Otherwise, it's just a random idea that would be cool or would be awesome if you think, not called a theory though, So that's just a basic run-of-the-mill, you're watching a TV show and you think someone's gonna die, or you think someone's gonna hook up with someone, or you think some whatever because of the evidence presented in the story and plot and characters. Now, a scientific theory is even more so. Now, the difference between a scientific theory and I don't know, a scientific fact, so to speak, or anyways, a scientific theory is something that you have overwhelming evidence to say it's true, but you cannot test it over and over again. Because here's the thing with science is that before you can say anything is a fact, you have to have huge groups, like study groups, and it has to take you have to make sure it's not biased in any way. You have to have a control group, and it has to be able to be replicated over and over and over again by multiple different people, organizations, etc. Considering that evolution is something that has already happened and is continuing to happen on a very slow, period of time, but we have overwhelming anthropological evidence supporting it. It's a scientific theory because it's something that we can't test over and over again within a reasonable amount of time because it takes so long for any evolutionary changes to happen that it's not feasible. It's just too big of a thing. So, but we know it to be true because of the anthropological evidence. Now, just to put this into a frame of reference for you, gravity is a theory. The theory of gravity and how it works. It's a scientific theory. Now, anyone would say, but gravity's true. I pick up something and it falls. Oh, fucking. Anyways, I meant to drop that on my lap, but it went flying underneath. It bounced off and hit the floor. Good thing I have a protective case. Anyways, but the thing is that that's a very basic gravity. That doesn't tell you, it tells you that gravity exists, just like, seeing all these different, slowly changing but very similar over time, skulls and bones and everything else says that, yeah, it exists, but it doesn't tell you anything other than that. It doesn't, explain it, really. And that's where, you get into the scientific theory of things. Because the thing is that gravity is not just the fact that if you drop something, it falls. Gravity is the fact that planets or even moons, just large bodies, or even the sun, the gravitational pull, the centripetal force is making everything go away, not go in. Basically saying that the Earth is round, and yet everyone, no matter what side of the Earth you are on, it's going because that's all the gravitational pull to the center of it, and then all the planets orbiting around the sun, that's a gravitational pull and all this other stuff. So you can't really test that because it's just too big of a thing. You can't adequately test it. There's an a huge amount of evidence suggesting all of what we know about gravity because of all this evidence, but it's not something we can actively test, which is why it's still called a theory. So that's kind of like the difference between a scientific theory. Like something's a theory if you cannot actively test it over and over again and produce the same results. So it only gets to be kind of scientific fact. The thing is that it's a scientific theory. It might as well be fact, but it's not considered that because you can't actively test it. That's just what the terminology is, because that's just the way to distinguish between the different types of facts, if you will, like the different types of known realities. To say, you know, this is something we can test. It's on the micro level, or this is something we can't test because it's on the macro level. Super simple stuff that nobody seems to get. Well, not true. Plenty of people seem to get that, but still too many people that don't. And another thing, talking about evolution, you know, the typical, you know, like the monkey getting into the man, you know, that kind of, or I guess if you're, sorry, I'm doing that in front of me, so I guess for you it would be like that, but anyways, that's not how evolution works. So it's like, well, if we evolved from monkeys, then why are there still monkeys around? No, we did not evolve from monkeys, we evolved from a common ancestor of monkeys. And if you go far back enough, then we are related to even like things like trees and plants. So it's basically, we came from a common ancestor, which is why we share so much DNA with them. Basically, the more you have in common with another living organism, the more recent the split happened between our two species. So the way evolution actually works, I'll post a picture if I can find a decent one in the description. Is basically, instead of, you know, just a straight linear whatever, it's actually like a chart down, like, you know, with that, and then it breaks apart down to the different ones, and then those ones break apart, and etc. until you get all the modern species, which are still changing to this day. I mean, if you look at the Galapagos Islands, where Darwin did most of his works, the finches and everything else, like, what he observed then is completely changed. There's a bunch of new types of finches with their different beaks and everything. And I mean, even small changes in humans too. I mean, like just a small one is the wisdom teeth, the extra set of molars. Since our food is getting softer, we don't need the extra molars to crush our food. As well, they're noticing that the cranium, like the brain, is taking up more space, so the jaw is getting smaller. As well as, you know, having a smaller jaw is deemed more attractive, and so people with the smaller jaws, you know, end up procreating more, and more people have that genetics, and blah blah blah, because this is how evolution works. Somebody ends up with a mutation that helps them survive just a little bit better, or helps them procreate just a little bit better, and then they pass on those genes, whereas the person who didn't have that mutation doesn't survive or doesn't procreate as well, and then they don't pass on the genes as much. Basically, it's just, you know, small mutations developing and spreading around your genetics that help you survive better. Actually, a very prominent mutation that isn't, like a very huge mutation that isn't as common as people think it is the ability to digest lactose, to have dairy and not, you know, have digestional issues. It was a mutation that helps people to survive when they are desperate for food and they don't have a huge source of it, so they need to take it from, you know, the animals and whatnot. So there's all that. So it's really fascinating when you really look at it, but not a lot of people are willing to look at it. Well, there's plenty of people who are, but like, you know what I mean. Thanks for watching. And yeah, I went a little scientific and educating y'all. And before you ask, I'm not a science person. Well, my family all is, but I'm more artist, writer type deal. So, yeah, I'm, yeah, I keep on saying but yeah, I still know a decent amount of science, because like my dad, my mom, and my older brother are huge into science, and I find it fascinating. I just, you know, learn it from the internet instead of school, because I didn't do so well in school when it came to math and science. So, yeah.